I'd like to do a quick mic check, please. Greg, can you confirm that you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Hambleton with NASA's Office of Communications. The approximately 2-day test, known as the Wet Dress Rehearsal, began Friday, April 1st, and was stopped earlier today prior to tanking due to the loss of ability to pressurize the mobile launcher, which is a necessary step before proceeding with the operations to load propellant into the rocket's tank. The test is designed to demonstrate the ability to conduct a full launch countdown at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39B, including loading and draining cryogenic or supercooled propellants into the Artemis 1 rocket. Here to talk with us about the test and the path forward are Mike Sarafin, Artemis 1 Mission Manager from NASA headquarters, and Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, Artemis Launch Director from Exploration Ground Systems Program at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. After brief opening comments from each of our speakers, we'll take your questions. As you may have noticed, we're not using our standard conference line for this media teleconference. Our usual conference service was not able to accommodate our meeting today, so we ask that you bear with us through the question and answer period. If you are logged in on your computer, you will see along the bottom of your screen a menu, including an icon with a smiley face or reaction. You click on that, there's an option to raise your hand when we get to the question and answer session. So first, we'll go ahead and start with Mike Sarafin.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks for tying in. As the mission manager, I serve as the mission management team chair, and I'll walk you through the past 48-ish hours as we set up for the wet dress rehearsal and the activities that we've discussed and a few of the decisions we've made as a mission management team. And then I'll turn it over to Charlie, and Charlie will walk through some of the issues we've run into and the operation and kind of what our setup is. But I'll tell you, the last 48 hours has been one of the more interesting 48 hours that I've had in the context of working missions leading up to a launch, and in this case, leading up to a key test. On Friday afternoon, we held the 2-day in advance prep meeting for the wet dress rehearsal with our mission management team, and that meeting was largely focused on syncing the team as they arrived at the Cape, and getting a status from our launch operations team here at the Kennedy Space Center, led by our launch director Charlie, and where we stood headed into our wet dress rehearsal attempt today on Sunday the 3rd. At that meeting, we knew that weather was going to be probably one of our bigger challenges, and our launch weather officer from the 45th Space Delta forecast that we had a 90% chance of precipitation, an 80% chance of lightning, and a 20% chance of hail. And he was right on all but the hail metric, and classified the weather setup as strong to severe on Saturday afternoon. So, as a team, we knew that if we could get through that weather on Saturday afternoon, we stood a pretty good chance going into Sunday. And Saturday afternoon, as I was sitting eating an early dinner, knowing that I was going to come in early on Sunday, I got a phone call, and it was part of the call tree associated with the notification that we had a lightning strike inside the pad perimeter. And it turned out that we had not one, but we had 4 lightning strikes inside the pad perimeter that afternoon, Saturday afternoon. And this was in addition to the heavy rain that was predicted and high winds that were predicted. Really, again, the only thing that we were missing from the forecast was the hail. Unfortunately, we didn't have that. One of the lightning strikes was, according to our weather experts, fairly rare. It was a positively charged cloud-to-ground strike, and it was much stronger than the other ones that we're seeing, and it hit the catenary wire that sits between the towers. And we had prepared for lightning strike as part of our mission preps, and we had even pre-briefed that headed into the wet dress rehearsal, and we had a clear methodology outlined, and the team had done a great job preparing to walk through that methodology. And we basically pulled that plan off the shelf and walked through it. Because we had multiple lightning strikes to deal with, we held a call with the mission management team last night, Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And based on the pre-planned process that we had in place, we had the team share the data with our environmental and electromagnetic experts, and they worked their way through the data. They also compared the vehicle data with the results, and we were able to quickly clear 3 of the 4 lightning strikes. And the 4th one, because it was a stronger lightning strike, the team needed a little extra time to work through it. So we talked with our launch team, and we basically agreed to proceed at risk into the tanking meeting this morning at 0600. And in that interim time, the team was able to clear that 4th lightning strike. So we decided to proceed with the wet dress rehearsal portion that includes the cryo loading operations. And as we headed into that, our launch team came in and advised us that because of the weather overnight, because of the heavy rain, the high winds, that they were behind in the preparations out at Launch Complex 39. We're behind, over an hour headed into the cryo loading operation. So that was kind of our setup headed into today. And we ran into a couple of technical issues out at the pad associated with some ground systems that Charlie will walk us through. And, we kind of knew that we were proceeding at risk relative to the timeline, but we had great weather today, and we had the range available, and we decided to proceed. As part of that, we did run into additional technical issues. So we had a scrub meeting, and this afternoon we decided to set up for tomorrow and to press with our reattempt of the cryo loading operation tomorrow. So we've got a few issues to work through. Charlie will describe those. But I'll say throughout all of this, I'm incredibly impressed with our NASA and industry partner team in terms of their level of preparation, the discipline that they've demonstrated working through these problems, but then also their toughness to continue to really work through this. And as I sat through the meetings today and the team discussed the issues that were occurring to clear the lightning strike, but also the other technical issues we ran into today with the ground systems, I'm confident we're going to get through the wet dress, in fairly short order. We just got to work through these problems. I was also struck by a couple of things as we came in to discuss the outcome of the lightning strike, and then also this morning when I came in, and the things that really struck me are that we're having a lot of new experiences as we set up for the Artemis 1 mission in particular. And one of the new experiences was literally watching a 32-story tall rocket sit out there and have lightning strike around it with this lightning protection system do its job. It did a perfect job of protecting the vehicle, but seeing lightning strike around a rocket that big, that was definitely a new experience. But also when I came in this morning, because the tanking meeting was at 0600, I came in about 5:30, and it was still dark, and there was a cloud layer, I would say about 2,000 feet up, and the vehicle was all lit up at the pad, and it's just this bright, beautiful vehicle sitting at the pad, but the lights were reflecting off of the cloud layer above it at night, and it looked like a halo above the vehicle. It was just a beautiful sight. So that was another new experience. So we're learning about the vehicle. The team is prepared for this. We just need to get through a few technical issues. They've demonstrated incredible discipline and toughness, and I'm confident we're going to get there soon. So we just need to give the time to do that. So that's it for me in terms of opening comments.
Thanks. We'll go to Charlie.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charlie Blackwell-Thompson. I am the Artemis launch director. Mike covered quite a bit of what's happened over the last day or so. I'm going to take us back a little bit further. We had our call to stations on Friday afternoon since the last time that we talked to this group, and we finished up our call to stations. We powered up the flight hardware elements. We configured them for wet dress. We also configured our ground systems. Crew access arm was retracted. Orion crew module was closed out just prior to call to stations. Crew access arm was retracted on Friday morning prior to our call to stations on Friday afternoon. And everything was going very well. We are right along our timeline. As Mike described, we knew that we had some potential for severe weather. I happened to be in the Launch Control Center and saw some of the dark clouds rolling in, and as predicted, we did have weather that did bring a stop to our operations because of the high winds and because of the potential for lightning at the pad. So that set us behind by several hours. I would say about 4 hours or so. The team did a great job overnight. I couldn't be more proud of them. It is a really hard job to get out of the pad, to get everything finished up, to get, I like to refer to it as the big steel moves, and to get all the big steel moved, engine service platform dropped and pulled back to the launch position, side flame deflectors in position, extensible columns jacked. All of that work was completed after the weather had passed. And then, of course, in and around the time that we were about ready to send the teams back into the pad to begin that work, is when we were notified that we had a confirmed lightning strike. So the teams, as Mike described, we have a procedure in place for that. We pulled that off of the shelf. The data was collected, and it was sent to what we refer to as the E3 team of experts. And then once it came back to us that we had a confirmed strike within the perimeter of the pad, we began working through our procedures for how we go clear that. The team did that overnight along with completing the work, and so when we came in at 6 o'clock this morning for our pre-tanking briefing, as Mike described, we evaluated the lightning events. We also looked at the schedule, and by this time, the weather had cleared. And we began. We got air to GN2 early this morning, and we began clearing the pad somewhere around, I think it was around 5:30 or so, in preparation for tanking. Just as we were finishing up our work for tanking, around 7:15 or so, I don't have the exact time, but it was around 7:15, 7:30, we were notified of a supply fan issue. And for folks that maybe aren't familiar with what that is, the supply fans are located in the remote air building along the pad perimeter. We have redundant fans, and what they do is they provide air pressurization to different areas of the pad. This one in particular that had an issue today feeds the PTCR. It feeds, and in particular area that we were concerned with today, feeds the mobile launcher itself, along with the ECS room that is underneath the pad. So we were notified that there was an issue with that. We began putting plans into place because we had cleared the pad. We were ready for our tanking operations. We put together a crew to go back in and take a look at the situation and see what we could do. Originally, the supply fan 2 had a breaker trip, and so the team wanted to go in and take a look at that. And so we did send a team in to go do that. They also had some other instrumentation that they wanted to look at as well, and we allowed them to do that. So we were unable to resolve the issue. We switched over to a redundant fan and decided to press on with our immediate operations, and it wasn't long after that that we got the call that fan 2 had experienced an issue. It was a different fault. It was a fault on the VFD itself, and the only way that they could see that was to go back into the pad. It required local visibility. They did not have visibility into that remotely. at that point, we decided that given that this was our first-time operation and that we needed that pressurization for the mobile launcher and for some of the other areas, and really the purpose of that pressurization is to prevent, hazardous gas intrusion during load, so it provides a positive pressure. So in the event that you were to have a leak or have some sort of hazardous commodity out at the pad, that you couldn't have those gases intrude into those areas and potentially, cause a fire hazard or an increase in hazard. So we decided that we wanted to really understand that, given it was the first time loading of the vehicle, and we made the decision to stand down to get in a configuration to go troubleshoot that, and then to be ready to make another run at it tomorrow. So since that decision was made, we have backed out of some of the preparations, but not all, that were made in getting into tanking. All of the flight hardware elements will remain powered up, except for a booster, which will come down and then be brought right back up prior to tanking tomorrow. So we've configured, we've reconfigured from where we were earlier today. Our team has met and has laid out our plan for how we get back to tanking tomorrow, and so that is all worked out. We do intend to luckily for us, we can kind of drop right back in prior to tanking, right about that same part that I talked about this morning with that air to GN2 transition and clearing the pad, and we'll plan to do that early tomorrow morning. The plan to clear the pad, I'll get you a time in just a second. It's about 1:30, I believe, is when we'll plan to do that, and then we'll get back into our tanking operations. I do expect this evening we have gotten the teams back into the pad. After our scrub declaration, we have some safing operations that we need to go do. Those are all behind us. The team troubleshooting this issue is in the pad right now, and I expect to hear something from them over the next hour or two. So we do have the balance of this evening and really early into tomorrow morning to resolve this issue. And as I said, the estimate that I received was that the team needed about 4 to 5 hours, so I expect to hear something here in early evening. So with that, that's the only real issue in terms that our team is really looking at. Weather for tomorrow looks very favorable. The weather that you see outside today is supposed to continue through this evening, so we don't expect to have any issues like we did last night. Most of our systems will remain configured with just a couple of exceptions, so that work is done and behind us, and we'll just kind of hold in place, and then we'll come in and do those final preparations for tanking tomorrow. And it is our intention to begin that operation somewhere around the 7 o'clock hour tomorrow morning. I think that's all I have for status.
All right, thank you, Charlie. So now we'll begin the question and answer portion. We ask that you please stick to one question and identify to whom your question is directed. As usual, if we have time, we'll allow reporters to ask a second question. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're not using our standard conference line for media teleconferences, so please bear with us. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function. You can find that at the bottom of the screen with an icon smiley face. You click on that, there's a raise hand option at the top of that window that pops up. And I will call on you and unmute your mic to ask your question. So first we'll go with Bill Harwood of CBS News.
Hey, thank you very much. Well, Charlie, since we don't yet know what the problem was with the fans, let me back up to a question you addressed during the last briefing. I was looking for a few more details about. What exactly are you guys trying to accomplish with the 2 terminal countdown runs you've got planned, the one that goes down to 33 seconds or so and the one that goes down inside of 9 seconds? And I mean, in other words, what are you really looking for with those 2 separate runs? And what's the priority if you run into another time crunch? If you had to only do one, which one would you do? Thanks.
Bill, that's a great question. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer it the last time. So we do have 2 planned. The reason that we have 2 planned is we would like to go down into terminal count, and with the flight hardware and with all of the systems configured, do a recycle. That's something we've practiced many, many times in a sim, but we've never done it with the flight hardware. And we'd like to do it while we're in a test environment, a test like wet dress, versus, having to do that for the very first time in launch countdown, potentially in terminal count. And so we would like to go demonstrate that capability to get into terminal count, to recycle, to validate our timelines for how long it takes to get back from a terminal count run 1 to a terminal count run 2, and demonstrate the ability to do that within the 2-hour launch window. Again, we have our plans and procedures. We've trained it against the simulator, but we'd really like to do that with the flight hardware. To answer the second part of your question, could we eliminate one of them? And the answer is yes, we could. And that's something we could certainly go consider. And which one would that be? It would, so what we do in the first run through is that we go down to a defined hold point, and then we have a planned cutoff. And then we come back, recycle, come back to 10, and then come through again. And so if we were picking one, what we would do is we would come down to demonstrate our launch ready hold. We would come down to a defined point. If we had hold time remaining, we would demonstrate that hold, then we would pick up the count, and we would come all the way through to 9.3 seconds. So, or just inside of 10 seconds. So if we were picking one, we would probably pick that second one, and we would just start coming out at 10. We would go through terminal count. We would pick a point to demonstrate our launch ready hold. Once we had demonstrated that capability, we would pick up the count and go down in further into terminal count. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Jerry Askin of WKMG News 6. Jerry, your line is unmuted. Can you hear us? All right, we can't hear Jerry. We'll try to come back maybe. Our next question will be from, let's see, where did we go? Isam Ahmed of AFP.
Hi, thanks for doing this. So what's the, if everything goes to plan tomorrow, what's the new sort of timeline for the final countdown to roughly T minus 10? And just to absolutely be clear, the lightning strikes that you talked about, they only cause delays, but the system worked as it should have. The real problem was the pressurization system and the fans, right? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of that. The lightning event that we had yesterday, we were able to work our way through that and clear the systems and clear for the test today. And the fan issue was what was the cause today. We don't believe that was related to the storm or to the lightning event. And then let's see, with regards to the timeline for tomorrow, it is really the same as the timeline was for today. So we will shoot for our tanking operations to begin tomorrow right around 7 o'clock. And then our T0 time is planned for right around 14:40 local time.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jeff South of Space News.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm curious, if you're not able to get through the test tomorrow, what is the schedule going forward? How much more time on the range do you have before you have to give way to the AX-1 launch on 39A, or need to take, for example, a rest day for the crew? Thanks.
Yeah, hey Jeff, I'll take the first part of that, and then I'll let Charlie answer the rest for the crew. But we've got the range tomorrow, and if we get enough of the test data, or we get past a certain point in cryo loading, we are going to need to basically stand down for a couple of days to replenish the commodities, because the rocket is large enough where we don't have enough in the cryosphere on the hydrogen side for more than one attempt. If we do not load cryo tomorrow, if we don't get to that point like we did today, or if we stop very early, we will reserve the right to ask for the range on Tuesday. There will be some coordination required to do that, and we do think that that's a possibility for Tuesday. After that, we do run into a number of range conflicts that would require advanced coordination. So we got Monday in the bag for sure is an attempt. Tuesday is a definite possibility, but requires some additional coordination. And then after that, we'll just kind of have to play it day by day. And Charlie, I don't know if you want to talk about team rest on that one.
No, I think the primary driver, I mean, certainly, we'll, if we got into a multi-attempt kind of scenario, we certainly would go look at our T0 team and look at, their work schedules and work rotations. That's always a consideration. And then, as Mike said, there's also the commodity top-offs that are required. So I think that we're looking at a likely stand down. I mean, certainly tomorrow, I think we're ready to go. And then I would say after tomorrow, we'll go like any other scrub scenario. We'll go look at, what's going on the range. We'll go look at the technical capabilities. We'll go look at the turnaround, and we'll go look at the team, and then we'll make a good decision based on when that next opportunity should come.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Philip Sloss of NASAspaceflight.com. Philip, your line is open.
Me again.
All right. All right, Philip, your line is open.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. A question about these the fan systems. Obviously, with the lightning yesterday afternoon, maybe it's a coincidence without correlation. Is there any thought at all of any connection between the two? And if not, when was the last time that these systems were tested or run? And then just quickly on the countdown clock, did you recycle back to 6 hours and 40 minutes? Thanks.
So with respect to the fans, the fan is actually running from the time that we have the ML at the pad. So it has been in operation. There are two modes of operation for the fan. There's a what I'll call normal mode, and then there's when we're in hazardous operations, there's a different mode, and it really has to do with the capacity. And so the fan has been running since the ML came to the pad. On Friday, we did go in and do a ML pressurization test in preparation for our cryo-loading operations. Everything worked just fine, and certainly it was running yesterday, not in the hazardous mode, but it was running in its normal mode throughout the storm. The team doesn't believe that there's a linkage, but certainly, part of them going out and taking a look, they'll know more. But they don't believe that there's a linkage because it continued. They had it in operation yesterday. It continued to run normally during the storm activities, and then it was running this morning. Had been in the hazardous mode running for several hours before it encountered a problem. So they don't think that they're related, but certainly we'll know more once they get into the pad and they are able to do some diagnostics and some troubleshooting.
Thank you. And Jerry was able to put his question in the chat. He asked what role, if any, this will have on the Axiom or SpaceX launch planned later for this week. You'll need to reach out to Axiom or SpaceX to ask about their particular launch plan. We have time for one more question. I know this was a quick briefing, but please reach out if you have additional questions. Our next question will be from Stephen Clark of Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I just wanted to clarify something from Charlie Blackwell-Thompson. maybe I missed this, but do the fans actually supply air, conditioned air, or do they supply GN2 to these cavities into the various parts of the ML? And if I could, I would like to also ask, I wasn't able to ask this Friday, but talk about the cutoff at 9.34 seconds. Is that a manual cutoff or an automated cutoff? And can you just walk through like how that cutoff is triggered? Is there a mouse click or a button, or is it just pre-programmed into the software at 9.34? Thanks.
All right, so let's see, I think I can help with both of those. So the first part of your question is, this is an air fan. It is not GN2. So it is just providing an air pressurization. Again, this is, you think about, just providing that positive pressure in some of these cavities so that you don't have any kind of intrusion of haz gases or really anything else, but it's just providing that positive pressure on these various areas. And then related, let's see, your second question was, how do we do the cutoff? And so we do it, there's a couple of different ways. So first off, we have some software parameters. We have iLoad parameters that are in the flight software. Those are very specific for this test. They've been tested a number of times, and they are in there to force that cutoff at just inside of 10 seconds. And so those are in place, but certainly, we always like to have a backup plan, and so we also have a manual capability to do that cutoff. But we have 3 different iLoad parameters that are in there protecting us, and then that fourth one is a manual cutoff capability where our ground launch sequencer operator will be poised on the button. So multiple ways to ensure that that countdown clock does not go any further into the count than what we intended.
All right, thank you. We weren't able to get to all of the questions today. Feel free to reach out to one of our public affairs officers if you have additional questions that were not answered on today's briefing. And thank you all for joining us today. You can listen to a replay of this teleconference online shortly by visiting the Media Resources tab at nasa.gov/Artemis-1 later today. And to follow along with the updates for the wet dress rehearsal test, please go to the Artemis blog at blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis and join us on the NASA Explorations Ground Systems Twitter account. And you can also watch a live stream of the rocket on the pad at the KSC Newsroom YouTube channel. Those links are all available at the NASA blog. Thank you again, and that will conclude our call for today.